Welcome to another Legacy Warriors podcast where we're breaking down the top two feeder leagues to the UFC. Obviously, we got the LFA, but Cage Warriors is taking center stage this weekend as they have back-to-back events going down over there, I believe, capping off with this Cage Warriors 191 card, and they got a double header of title fights to headline this card. In the main event, we got the rematch between Liam Gittins and Alessandro Giordano, who fought a few months ago, but had the fight stopped due to, I believe it was an unintentional eye poke from the Liam Gittins side, and that caused a stoppage to the fight, resulting in a no contest. And then in the co-main event, we got the interim lightweight title on the line, as we have James Power coming in at minus 140 going up against Umar Tugarev, who's looking to make a splash in his Cage Warriors debut. There are 16 fights on this card, so it took me a little bit longer than I was hoping to in terms of getting through this card for you guys. So considering that the card is taking place in just under, 20 hours, less than 24 hours for sure, I'm going to get through this as briefly and quick pick style as possible for you guys, just so you guys can get the predictions here as quickly as possible. Cage Warriors 190 just wrapped. We did not do all that well on there. Aiden Lee lost by split decision. Was hoping he'd have a little bit more success in terms of his grappling. He had some good success in the first round, but unfortunately was not able to get into the 2 second rounds. Charles Joyner, not as good of a striker nor mixed martial artist as I expected. Got held against the cage for as long as that fight lasted until he got TKO'd. And then the Harry Shaw fight. I've just had this weird attachment to Shaw, and he's let me down 2 times now. So that'll likely be the end of it in terms of backing Harry Shaw there. So let's see if we can change our fortunes around this weekend, or at least with this Cage Warriors 191 card. I do want to quickly plug OKTAGON 73, I believe the number is. It's going down as well at the same time as Cage Warriors 191. I'll only have written breakdowns for that on the Lock of the Night Patreon page. That's where you can also find all the tracked plays, confident plays, all that stuff on the Lock of the Night Patreon page for the UFC card that goes down tomorrow night as well. All right, let's get into this 16-fight Cage Warriors 191 card. Quick picks-ish style. First matchup up, Sheldon Ryan, minus 175, going up against Brad Camps. Ryan is the better, more aggressive BJJ specialist here, and I think that's going to come into play as he puts Camp into bad spots and eventually grinds him out or finds himself in a submission. I think Ryan will win this fight, and I think he makes it look quite dominant. Next up, we got Christian Soda going up against Damon Donald. No odds on this matchup for some reason. I think it was a short notice fight. Donald was expected to fight on Unplugged, the card yesterday or this morning, but his opponent pulled out. Same thing happened with Christian Soda, so they matched them up together here. I think Donald is the better fighter. I'd shoot on him at anything better than minus 150. I still have my question marks about Christian Soda, but I think Donald is a very crisp, clean striker, and I think he'll be able to put together solid combinations here to win this fight on the scorecards, but it's all odds dependent on whether I'd actually pull the trigger on him or not. Next up, squash match here between Chris Price, who comes in at minus 900, going up against Tony Silva, who comes in at plus 600. Price does a great job in terms of just getting the striking realm out of there completely so he can get to his grappling, engages in the clinch, looks to disrupt the balance of his opponents, quickly takes their back. He's more often than not able to get that submission, usually in the first round, and he was unable to do so against Ferreira last time around, but I think he won't have as much issues here against Tony Silva, and I expect him to get this to the ground ASAP, find the submission, but we do not parlay minus 900s, even though I'm picking Chris Price to win this fight. Next up, we got Mikolajewski coming in at minus 300, going up against Samir Selmi, who comes in at plus 250. Mikolajewski let me down last time around as he got just grinded out by the ever-aggressive nature of Del Valle, but I think that this will be a great bounce-back spot for him as he is the slicker striker compared to the Tunisian fighter here, and I think it'll ultimately be the grappling of Mikolajewski that allows him to get this fight to the ground and find that finish within 2 rounds. Next up, fun matchup here between Breen, who comes in at plus 115, going up against Mario Ferreira, I should say, who comes in at minus 135. Breen is a very slick and educated striker, but has made some issues or mistakes and had issues in the grappling realm before, and that's what he's going to be facing a lot of here with Mario Ferreira. The only reason I'm not pulling the trigger on Ferreira is due to his lack of competition against decent opposition, and Breen is clearly the better striker, and I'd be surprised if Cage Warriors would bring in a guy like Ferreira to go up against somebody they're clearly invested in with Breen, especially if it's a bad stylistic matchup. So there might be something I'm missing out on here, but based on what tape is telling me, I think Ferreira should be able to grind this out, maybe even find a submission. But if Breen can stop the takedowns and keep this fight in the striking realm, it's going to cause Ferreira a ton of trouble. But I am going to go with Ferreira here, and I think he grinds this fight out and wins it on the scorecards. Next up, we got George Smith coming in at minus 145, going up against Ghassan Abdenabi, who comes in at plus 125. Very low-level fight here. Smith, BJJ specialist, wants to likely take this fight to the ground to stay away from the Dutch kickboxing style of Abdenabi. Abdenabi does not have that good of takedown defense, but I'm not completely sold on the wrestling of Smith. I know once the fight hits the ground, he'll be the far superior BJJ specialist, but it's just the lack of ability to, or lack of willingness for me to take the chalk here on Smith. Even though it's slight chalk, knowing he could get busted up on the feet by a superior kickboxer makes me hesitant in terms of taking him at minus 145. But Abdenabi is no bueno on the ground, and I think that's where Smith will eventually find his way, and I think he'll be able to find that submission. Next up, we got Yusuf Nazokatov going up against Ryan Campbell. Nazokatov actually came through as an underdog for me last time around against Cameron Stewart. That was a great matchup where he was unable to get away from the grappling early and then really picked it up in the second and third rounds with his striking approach. But he's facing a much better grappler here in Ryan Campbell, who trains alongside top Cage Warriors prospect, I should say, Sean Clancy Jr. And we know what Clancy's been doing to his opposition, and I think Campbell is in the same step and of the same ilk as Sean Clancy Jr., and I think we'll see him showcase that here against Nazokatov. So I'm going to go Campbell. I think he grinds this fight out. I think he wins it with relative ease, and I love him at this minus 210 line. Next up, we got Joe Fields coming in at minus 220 going up against David Scarano, who comes in at plus 185. Scarano is a very aggressive fighter, and he is a very aggressive BJJ specialist. But in the striking realm, you see when he faces superior strikers, he usually ends up leaving many openings for them to hit him. And even though he has good durability, which allows him to stick around in most fights, if he can't get fights to the ground, he will start to struggle. And that's what I think he's going to have to deal with here against Joe Fields. I think Fields will torch the calf of Scarano throughout this matchup, utilize a ton of lateral movement, good combination striking, good takedown defense, and then just ultimately control this fight in the striking realm. I'd be surprised if he finishes Scarano. I think he chips away at him and wins this fight on the scorecards, but I do not mind this minus 220 line because I think quite highly of Joe Fields, if I'm being honest. All right, next up, we got Connor Wilson coming in at minus 220, going up against Florian Doskja, who comes in at plus 185. Now, I've been higher on Florian in the past more than I should have, and even in his last matchup against David Scarano, who really just put away the fact that Doskja was the better athlete and all-around fighter, and just applied a pressure that Doskja could not keep up with. Wilson may not bring that type of style here, but he is the better striker, and he does a good job in terms of putting combinations together, treading the cage from distance, forcing his opponents to take bad shots or even enter the pocket recklessly, and that's where we see him usually put together 3, 4, 5 punch combinations and then get back out into distance and start rinsing and repeating that process. I expect him to shuck off the takedowns here from Florian Doskja, and I think he'll eventually just get comfortable at range, getting into his groove, throwing his combinations, letting his output go, and I think that will lead to him winning this fight on the scorecards. Next up, we got Ingram coming in at minus 1,000 going up against Farouk Aligadzhiev, who comes in at plus 700. Now, Aligadzhiev is an absolute can crusher. This guy goes out there, takes opponents to the ground immediately, gets their back, and either ground and pounds them or finds a rear naked choke. But when he fights anybody of legitimate resistance, most notably he fought Giacomo Michaelis, who just recently headlined a Cage Warriors card. We saw Michaelis deal with that grapple-heavy approach early and then finish Aligadzhiev in the second round. And I think Ingram will have similar success, maybe even more success, by finishing Aligadzhiev earlier. Ingram is the better grappler, way better cardio, better striker, and I think he's going to expose Aligadzhiev here, even though minus 1,000 kind of indicates that Ingram should crush and cruise in this matchup. Still not a line that I'd be willing to parlay, no matter who it is, but I expect him to go out there and crush Aligadzhiev within a round and a half. All right, fun matchup here next where we got O'Meal Brown coming in at minus 550 going up against the Mexican newcomer Edgar Escarrega, who comes in at plus 400. Now, Brown, got knocked out by Yanis Bashar. I believe that was at the ending of 2023. It might have been sometime between October and December of 2023, but Bashar made quick work of Brown that night, and that does showcase some issues in Brown's game in terms of the striking defense and maybe his dwindling durability. We've seen him really grow up in the cage, though, as he's been a guy that often goes out there and just tries to knock his opponents out quickly, but we've started to see him lean on his physicality and strength recently, allowing him to drag opponents to the ground and just smother them from that top position. But I think Escarrega is a very difficult opponent for him, and I'm kind of surprised the line is as wide as it is. The one thing that obviously gives me some concern regarding the Mexican fighter is that he's been out of the cage for nearly 2 years at this point. But when he does compete, very good durability, very good distance striking, a very active grappling game as well. And I think he can make this very difficult for Brown. I think he'll be very active in terms of getting to his grappling, or at least not settling on bottom for too long. And then from there, I think he'll be able to utilize his pace and cardio advantage and really wear down O'Meal Brown, leading to him either winning this fight late or just out-damaging Brown and winning this fight on the scorecards. But plus 400. That is a laughable line, in my opinion. Maybe Brown starches him from jump, but from what I've been seeing, Escarrega is not that bad, and I think he can more than likely pull off the upset here. All right, one of my favorite Cage Warriors prospects comes up next here, and Teddy Stringer, who comes in at minus 650, going up against Cage Warriors newcomer Torpel Merjoev, who comes in at plus 475. I expect Stringer to give Merjoev, who is 5-0, his first pro loss. Merjoev is a very physical fighter who normally looks to smother his opponents in the grappling realm. He's kind of short, stocky, kind of has some strength to him as well, but he hasn't faced anybody of the level of Stringer. And I think this is one of those moments where Stringer will actually look to utilize his grappling defensively and see that Merjoev actually has a lot of issues in his striking game. And I think we could see Stringer really bite down on his mouthpiece and let go with big shots that will likely put Merjoev out. I like the under 1.5 here around that minus 155 range. I think this is a spot where Stringer just really gets his punches together, shows off his power, and either gets that straight up knockout or a club and sub victory with relative ease. Next up, we got Adam Cullen coming in at minus 425 going up against Lucas Cruz, who comes in at plus 325. Now, Cruz is obviously of Brazilian descent, but it seems like he set up shop over there at the Spitfire gym in Germany, and he has some decent training partners with him as well. He's 10-3, had a 3-fight winning streak snapped last time around by a PFL veteran, and is a guy that seems to start very slow, but you can't do that against a guy in Adam Cullen, who is a hot, quick starter, looks to get his opponents to the ground immediately and smash them from that top position, and I think he's going to be successful in doing that here against Cruz. Now, you guys know me. I don't mind fading Cullen if I see the right opportunity, and I've been able to do it with Dumitru Drilin and even Harold Cohen 2 fights ago, I believe that was now, or 3 fights ago. But Cullen slowly showing improvements, showing that the experience that he's been going through over the last couple of fights has been helping him evolve into a more mature fighter. And I think we'll see those improvements continue here as he goes out there and finishes Lucas Cruz within a round and a half. Next up, very fun and intriguing matchup here between veteran Tim Wilde, who returns to Cage Warriors, comes in at plus 105, going up against Michael Pagani, who comes in at minus 125. Now, the issue with Pagani, who was 7-0 going into his second last matchup, is not so much his skill set, but the fact that it seems like he's biting off more than he can chew in a lot of these fights recently. That first loss came to Mason Jones in a very hard-fought fight where Jones was clearly showing that there's levels to this. And then last time around against Konstantinos Natellis, a fight that he should have won, he ended up losing crucial moments to control time and takedowns, causing Pagani to lose his second straight matchup. Now, looking to snap his losing streak, he's taken on a very tough veteran in Tim Wilde, who's pulled off some solid upsets himself. Pagani normally utilizes his physicality to either get his grappling going or put big punches on his opponent and start walking them down. But Tim Wilde is usually very good in terms of keeping a perpetual footwork type of game, cutting a ton of angles, throwing a lot of combinations, a lot of head kicks, and showcasing that his grappling defense has been improving since earlier on in his career. But this is a very tough fight. Excuse me. This is a very tough fight for Pagani to try to get his confidence back, especially if he can't establish his dominance from jump. We know Wilde is very squirmy and very difficult to muzzle, and I think that's what's going to cause Pagani some issues here. Look for Wilde to tread distance pretty well, land his combinations, land some big shots on Pagani, and I think that he can edge this fight out on the scorecards ever so slightly. The only thing keeping me from having more confidence on the Wilde side is the fact that he is getting up there in age. Obviously fighting a young stud like Pagani, not the most ideal, but he's gone up against other tough guys, undefeated guys, and come out on top. And I think he can do that once again here against Pagani as he edges him out on the scorecards, winning this fight by decision. All right, moving over to the co-main event, which shows the first title on the line for this Cage Warriors card. It's the interim lightweight title, as we have James Power coming in at minus 140, going up against Omar Tugarev, who comes in at plus 120. Now, Power is obviously a solid striker who puts together solid combinations and also shown an ability to wear opponents down up against the cage and then start landing dirty knees and dirty boxing and really start to damage them that way. We've seen opponents try to out-grapple him, and there have been some opponents that have been successful with it, but he is showing an improvement in terms of working back out of those bad spots, letting go with his combinations and putting opponents away, just like he did against Dumitru Drulin last time around. Tugarev, 7-0 prospect coming over from Finland. He's been training at Team KF, which has obviously produced some solid Cage Warriors prospects as well. Pretty much wants to take his opponents to the ground immediately and does a great job in terms of riding those positions and damaging his opponents while he's doing so. But you're seeing as he's taking steps up in competition, it's getting harder for him to finish these guys, but also even harder to establish that dominant control, which often makes him start to slow down later on in matchups. Now, here against Power, I fully expect Tugarev to have some early success with maybe the first 2 rounds with landing some takedowns and maybe controlling Power in some spots. But I do not think he's going to be able to establish a dominant enough position to force a finish, which will lead to Power starting to take over in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. And I think that eventually leads to Power actually finding the finish in championship rounds here. Minus 140, not a bad line, but I don't want to completely write off Tugarev, who could be very successful himself if he does have a better gas tank than I expect him to, and if he has improved his control and can keep Power in these bad spots and wear him down. But I think Power ends up landing more damage and winning this fight down the stretch. All right, that brings us to our headliner now, where we got Liam Gittins looking to defend his title, coming in at minus 550, rematching the Italian Alessandro Giordano, who comes in at plus 400. Now, the first matchup went down just back in March, and that night, Gittins showed absolutely no respect to Giordano, walked him down the entire time, landed a plethora of combinations, and it just felt like at any given moment that Gittins could have just put together a bigger barrage of shots, and that probably would have stopped the fight. But in that 3rd round, I believe it was, there was an unintentional eye poke that forced a stoppage to that matchup and caused a no contest. Now, there is some bad blood brewing over this, just from the weigh-ins, where we saw, Gittins poking fun at Giordano a little bit, wearing an eye patch and trying to just goat him that way. And it was actually one of Giordano's coaches that tried to kick Gittins from the side and caused a little bit of a brawl there at the weigh-ins. But ultimately, Giordano's coach was pretty much banned from Cage Warriors events, and it could be showing that there is a little bit of anger and just issues on the Giordano side wanting to get this fight back. But I think that this is a spot where Gittins doesn't have to worry too much about the knockout power coming back his way. I think he'll be able to dictate the pace of this matchup, maybe engage in the clinch a little bit more to really start wearing Giordano down. But I think that Gittins will just replicate what he did last time around, walking Giordano down, throwing combinations, just keeping the foot on the gas. And I think that will lead to him getting the finish probably in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round, and still Cage Warriors champion Liam Gittins. All right. There you guys go. 16 fights broken down for you guys there. Roughly 20 minutes. I was trying to be quick picks-ish about it, but I do want to touch on some spots for those matchups. I do have track plays for this card. I believe there's 5 or 6 plays that I got for this card, hoping to make up for the Cage Warriors 190 blunder that we had this morning. But obviously, OKTAGON, PFL, and UFC are yet to go down still, so hopefully we can rake some profit for this weekend. All right, good luck on your plays for this. I'll be back in a few hours with the UFC prop drop if you guys are interested in that. See you guys in a few hours. Peace.